Welcome back to a new episode of Jyoty'S Tips and Tricks. This time we've got the name down. Anyways, if you're new to tips and tricks, what I do is every time I pick a topic and I give you my tips and tricks, advice, insights, experiences that you can then take home, take away, and process and do with it as you please. What I will say at the start of every video is everything I say is not the end all be all. It's not the final truth. It's not the Bible. It's not the guidebook that applies to everyone. It's not one size fits all. But what I try to do is give you my experience and my opinions, and hopefully it can either give you a different perspective, like a new perspective, or everything that you've been told so far didn't work out, and maybe this could be the answer. Today's video is one that I think is really helpful in the sense of the whole new perspective. So it's not practical advice, I would say. These are not things that you could think, oh, I'm gonna do this now, or I can apply it right now, but it's something that will transpire over a longer period of time and probably will make sense as you go through your DJ, radio host, whatever career. And that is manager versus agent. Do you need one? When do you need one? What does each do? Because these two things seem to get very mixed up. I, at the moment, only work with a manager. Shout out Henry. We all love Henry. Woo! Oh, I just need him to myself, so stop DMing him. People have been doing that. So a manager is there to look after you as a brand, look after your day-to-day, make sure you're okay, wants to know what you've got planned, lets you know what is planned without you knowing, I guess, in a way, and really helps you grow in your career. Often also has to take the role of a best friend, of a mom, of a partner. And therapist, yeah, really, like a manager is like your day-to-day, your everyday, your ride or die, and looks at things very much long-term. What you also see very often is because of that reason, because it's someone that has to be so connected to you on a personal level, often when people start off with a non-industry background or connections or links, and very often when things kind of happen very quickly for them, you'll find that their manager is someone from their personal circle, someone that they've been friends with, a family member. And the reason that often does work is because your manager really should want the best for you. It's someone who really wants to see you win. It really has to be someone who believes in you, who sees whatever you see for yourself, and who really wants to put your needs to the forefront to make your dreams a reality. Selfless. It's a very selfless job. An agent is someone who is there purely for bookings. An agent is there to get you bookings, to process bookings, and afterwards make sure that you get paid for your bookings. And the two tend to get quite mixed up. You see a lot of people moaning about their managers because they're not getting them any work. And I think this is a little bit of a tricky gray area, because a manager isn't necessarily there to go out and find you bookings. They're definitely there to maintain relationships and to network on your behalf, to make sure your name is heard and people are aware of the work that you're doing and the talent that you have. But they're not necessarily there reaching out to promoters, getting your name on a bill, making sure that your name is bigger or whatever your fee should be, or that you get a hotel or your travel. That is really an agent's job. And actually, even that, what I just mentioned, the packaging around a booking, could be a gray area as well, especially when you do have a manager and an agent. A lot of professional, bigger agencies will have different packages. So you can get the full package, which is where an agent will, on your behalf, reach out to promoters, then actually negotiate a deal. But after the fee has been negotiated, also deal with your accommodation, with your travel, your rider, whatever needs and requirements you have. Then they'll often take a bigger percentage. They'll want like 20%. But there's also a lot of agencies that offer you a deal where the agent will go out and do the first few steps, which is make sure the booking comes in, and once that's locked in, passes it on to your manager. So then the manager will deal with all the requirements, all your wants, your needs. That scenario, the agent will take a lower cut. I don't know what it is. It could be between 10 to 15, but it depends. So this is something to be very well aware of. There's not just a one deal offer. You can always negotiate depending on what kind of situation and what kind of team you're dealing with. This is also something to keep in mind. When you have a manager and have an agent, also means that more people need to get paid. So you're giving away your cut. Is it worth it? That's the one thing you need to think about. Speaking from my own experience, and I think this is the best way for me to make it clear to you why I at the moment don't have an agent, is because Henry and I have done a lot of work mapping out my 5-year plan. So that includes everything from where do I see myself go with radio, presenting, DJ gigs. At the start of the year, we made a whole list of what stages do I want to grace, what venues do I really want to play, what festivals do I dream of playing, and then you kind of map out little strategies to potentially at some point tick those things off the list. That's a real managerial thing to do. Thinking of a roadmap, thinking of how your brand is going to get bigger and how you're going to achieve all your dreams. A lot of these things that I put on my list, we managed to tick off, especially when it comes to bookings. A lot of the festival offers came in, a lot of the branded gigs I wanted to do came in, and we did that all without an agent. So over the last 6 months or so, when I have had offers and questions coming in from booking agents wanting to work with me, as appealing as the name of an agency might sound, I had to really ask myself, could I get these bookings without this person? Very often the answer was yes. So then what really can this agent offer me? Do I want to give money to someone who isn't really of added value? And this is a reoccurring theme in all these tips and tricks videos we do. What is the added value? Another thing to really look out for is how much does this agent who tries to work with you know about you? I had a lot of agency offers after the boiler room, my first boiler room session went online, because it had a really big press moment. It got loads of momentum. And a lot of the agents that I spoke to could only kind of hype up that one set that they had seen. But they had no idea of all the previous festivals I had played, countries I had played, but also what type of music I've played in the past. A lot of them also couldn't even name me one radio show I had done or one guest I had had on my radio show. For me, it's really important that my agent knows what I'm capable of and what I would like to do more of, and not pigeonhole me in one kind of category. Another thing to really look out for, personally for me, is who else do they look after? An agent often has a roster. A roster means it's a list of people, talent that they look after. Some people are very comfortable with the idea of joining a roster that's very similar to their style, to their aesthetic. I, on the other hand, again, super personal, would prefer to have an agent that has a very varied roster, simply because I don't really want to fight over bookings with people I share a roster with. Let's say I'm with an agent and he has a lot of DJs. A lot of them happen to be girls, which on our end shouldn't be a big deal, but still in the world of promoters, it's a filter, which we know with men isn't. But sometimes when you're like one girl and another girl, oh, they're both female DJs, it's all of a sudden a category. I don't really want to share a roster that is full of also other girls that also do a lot of like soulful stuff, and then at night do the whole heavy club 125 and up BPM thing, things that are very similar to me, because it's not a big deal if we're really ranging in size. So if I'm like a tier 3 and the other one's a tier 2 and a tier 1. When I say tiers, I mean how known we are, how much we cost. If you're in different tiers, that's fine, because a promoter is either looking for, the warm up, the mid, or the headliner, and you're not often competing with each other. But let's say my agent has all the tier 3s in the similar sound, with the similar look and a similar vibe. We're gonna be fighting over bookings that come in. That's something I am very wary of. And you know what? A lot of DJs will tell me that that's ridiculous, but it's something to keep in mind, especially when you're kind of shopping around. Just make sure you have that in the back of your mind. Will this lineup of people that I'm presented amongst work in my favor or work against me? And another thing that's really important to look out for is, do your manager and your agent get on? They need to have the same vision for you. Because if your manager sees you going left and your agent sees you going right, at some point there's going to be a conflict, because your agent's going to be shopping around for bookings that your manager thinks that you shouldn't be taking anyways. They need to be on the same page, and it needs to really go hand in hand with what you set out for yourself. Another thing to really be aware of when you work with someone, and this actually applies to both agent and the manager, make sure you work with people who make you look good. And I'm only saying this because of my experiences as booker of talent. I have dealt with many agents who are absolute twats. And because of that, I will never book their artist ever again. I have not very often dealt with managers that are extremely rude. A manager is very protective, and that's quite understandable. An agent, however, doesn't need to be protective once your contract is signed or the deal is negotiated. From that moment on, you're dealing with the artist and their team, their personal team, so a manager. An agent, in my opinion, especially when you're working with brands, shouldn't be asking for product for themselves. Because yes, that happens a lot. I have done so many bookings for brands that I've worked for, where an agent will then loop off the management team and then ask if, are there still any boots that I could get in a size 8? Or wait, what? Aren't you already taking 20% off of the big fee that you negotiated up so much? Because your cut will get bigger. Absolutely not. My advice is, if you're already working with somebody or if you just started working with somebody, ask around. When you show up to a booking, ask the promoter, how was so-and-so to deal with? How were they over the phone? How were they on the email? Were they nice? Were they easy to work with? Any issues? No. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Don't let anybody guilt you into, oh, why are you checking up on me? Or why are you asking about me? That's completely normal. I feel like every artist should do that. Every talent should do that, because they become your business card. And if they're rude and they're hard to work with, that's gonna get in the way of your money, really and truly.
Can you have an agent without having a manager?
Yep, because just how I explained that I have a manager and I don't have an agent, because at the moment I don't need an agent. I wouldn't say I don't need an agent. I haven't found the right agent. Let me put it like that. I think as a DJ, you hear this a lot. A lot of DJs I know, especially here in London, they have agents and they don't have managers. And why that works is because they purely are living and focusing on bookings. I think when you do a lot of different facets of being a DJ / curator, a manager is definitely necessary. But if you're doing back-to-back bookings, and you don't have to worry so much about what you're doing outside of that, then working with an agent is perfectly fine, and that will get you really far if your focus is really getting in the checks of playing sets. So yeah, it can go both ways. But having both, I think, is for a lot of people something to work up towards. But don't let the actual having of an agent be your focus. The focus should be something that you're trying to achieve that then requires an agent. So if you have a manager and an agent, I think you would barely be speaking to the agent. The agent will mostly reporting to your manager. Your manager is really your funnel. Everything should kind of go through your manager and then come through to you. Also, this leads me to another thing. When you're still up and coming, you play for a lot of friends and obviously you deal with all the bookings yourself. I know that a lot of people find it very difficult to then bring in that agent or that manager. And I think let the promoter know why you're introducing a third person into the conversation. And there's so many ways of going about it. But when they're your own friends, they will understand. If you feel like, okay, hey, you know, I'm getting to a place now where it's not even about the money, I'll still do it for a mate's rate, but my manager looks after everything I do, that's how you'll tell them. You say, hey, look, my manager is very aware that I DJ for you for this much because I've always done that and you're my friend and I love you, but I don't look after my own diary, so do you mind if I bring them in and you just let them know how and what? You can also be in a situation where it is now becoming a money thing and you do really need someone to kind of speak on your behalf. Again, be honest, be open. That's the best way to be about it. Like, hey, you know, I now work on a contract base with my manager. He or she has to be involved. I'm gonna loop them in. If there's anything that I need to know about or you want me to tell them beforehand, let me know. Protect yourself. And if people love you and they care about you, they'll respect it. At the end of the day, this is your work. You have to treat it like a job. You're not gonna go into your mate's office and just bypass whoever's business or company it is just to go and hang out with your pal. No, you know, same thing. There's certain promoters I've become really cool with, but they weren't friends of mine when I first got booked. We have become friendly over time. They still have to deal with my manager with any booking that comes up. And it's tricky sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's business. And also know that it kind of sets a tone that people can't really mess you about if they ever had any intention to do so. It just makes it really clear, and like I said, your manager is really there to ride or die, so they will make sure that you don't get misused or abused or taken advantage of along the way. So yeah.
And they chase your invoices for you.
And they chase your invoice, because I'm so awkward with money, I can't have money conversations. Henry does that for me. He will make sure that I don't even have to worry about it. That money conversation starts before I've even done the job. He'll make sure that there's agreed when I get paid. Is it before? Is it 50-50? Is it 100% after? If it's after, he will know how many days he's given them in order to make that payment. And I don't really have to worry about it. So yeah. Get that money. So actually the main thing of today's video is don't get the two mixed up. An agent isn't necessarily there to create your brand for you. They fit in like a little puzzle piece within your brand strategy. Or I keep saying brand strategy, but you know what I mean, like the brand that is you. And a manager isn't necessarily there to get you new bookings. A manager is really there to, whatever relationships that have been built, to keep on building them, to make sure that they're being maintained, that people don't forget about you, that people know what you're working on and you're still around, and that you're nice and and a lot of like relationship building and nurturing and looking after you, making sure you're okay, and also just making sure that there's a plan at all times. I hope that was helpful. If you think so, and if you haven't watched any of the other videos, you can go to my IGTV and there's a whole series called Jyoty'S Tips and Tricks, and also on YouTube, and you can look back at all the other ones. And if you want to see a certain video on a certain topic, you can just hit me up, JYOTY. Send me a little DM, say, hey. Also, you should look at the back of this t-shirt.
Woo! Patta!
I have to drink my coffee. I wasn't really awake.
Drink it. No, that was good.